I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast From My Head to Your Ears. And today is going to be part one of my conversation with my longtime friend, Craig Edwards. We've been friends for 50 years. He grew up in Christopher, Illinois, moved to McLeansboro, went to SIU, ended up working in the movie and TV industry. He's an interesting person and a lot of fun to talk to. And like I said, we've been friends forever. This is a two-part, as I mentioned, and this is part one. So I'm going to take a break and I'll return. I'm Leonard Riggs. This is my podcast, From My Head to Your Ears, and I'll be back with Craig Edwards. I figured out we've known each other for 50 years this year, which is crazy.
That is.
We met at your cousin Keith's house. Do you remember anything about that? And I understand if you don't, because that was 50 years ago.
No, I remember playing over there, and I do have specific memories of certain things. I remember watching the Kolchak with the Aztec mummy at his house. I remember playing Dirty Mary Crazy Larry on his swing set out back.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a weird game where you just went real fast in the swing.
I believe you both got. Did you get to see Dirty Mary Crazy Larry at the theater?
At the drive-in, actually. I don't know which drive-in. Probably the Ren Lake drive-in.
I know Keith got to see it too, because I remember that, because I wasn't allowed to go to movies back then.
Right.
Believe it or not. My mom was Pentecostal, so I didn't get to go to the theater until 1979 when Star Trek the motion picture premiered, which incidentally is today the anniversary of
it sure
Star
is.
Trek premiering.
That's right.
December 7th, 1979, yeah. Which is kind of crazy that I brought that up. I didn't mean to do that little reference there, but it just kind of came about. I remember the first day I met you, though. It's kind of funny because Keith was playing with you. It was, of course, 1973, so we had to have been 6.
Right.
Since that was 50 years ago, but we're only 39, so I don't know how that math works. But anyway,
that's that new Common Core, I think.
I think, yeah. Common Core. That's perfect. We'll just leave it at that. I do remember being really possessive of my friends, and Keith was probably one of the first friends I ever had, and I was really jealous because he wasn't playing with me; he was playing with you. So I was riding my bike around, just so he knew I was ignoring him and mad because I was a weird little kid. And I think you grabbed my bike and you're like, "Hey, I'm Keith's cousin Craig." And maybe it wasn't exactly like that, but that's pretty much what happened. And I think we started talking about monster movies, and we've been friends ever since. And I believe you moved you attended second grade at Christopher Elementary School.
Yeah, that's right. Mrs. Twitty's class.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And you sat in front of me and you gave me chicken pox.
Oh, God.
And I think I gave
Wait, how do we know you didn't give it to me?
No, you had it first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got it after you, and then I think Lori Batson got it, and everybody we sat around, we had our little group there. That's kind of a funny memory, actually. It wasn't so pleasant, though, I think at the time, but chicken pox.
Do you remember? I don't know if this happened at your place, but when I got the chicken pox, of course you get the little red bumps and everything, but there was no clear indication of if you had chicken pox or some kind of one of the forms of measles.
Right.
Or mumps, I think was the other thing. But whatever it was, I remember distinctly that my grandmother was greatly fearful of letting me move around because I think it was mumps that they would fall like into your crotch and like cause your testicles to no longer work or something. Yes.
Yeah, that was one of those old wives. Well, I don't know if it's an old wives' tale. It may be true, actually, but there's just some things the older mothers and grandmothers believed that maybe wasn't exactly true. I remember the chicken pox as being just really painful little blisters at first. Itchy. I think they were itchy. I remember I was planning out in we live in Southern Illinois and there's not a lot to do, so understand this. I was playing out in the ditch in the rain, and I just happened to notice these little bumps on my stomach. And I came in, and my mom's like, oh, "It's chicken pox," and you'd already had it, so we knew I was very likely exposed to them. So, yeah, it's funny how we remember those things all those years ago. But luckily, we got chicken pox out of the way, and let's hope we don't get the shingles in our life, because that's very
I just took the first shingles shot just
Did you
so.
really? I didn't
Yeah,
know
I
there were
did.
shingle shots.
There are. You have to take them twice. So I took the first one, and I'm going to get the next one in March. I mean, you take them far apart from each other, and they hurt.
Well, I guess shingles hurt a lot worse, so it's probably worth the pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So other than giving each other diseases, I think we had a lot of fun as children. A lot of fun on the phone. And
I have to mention on the chickenpox thing, I do have to mention that the part that bothered me the worst was the ones up on your scalp, in your hair.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah, that was the worst part of it for whatever reason, because I think I like to scratch my head a lot or something, but you'd reach up there and it hurt when you messed with them.
Oh, they were everywhere too, not just on your head, but they just cover your body. It's so unpleasant.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But we shared common interests from the very beginning. We loved Universal Monsters, and I think that was our first conversation. And my dad was a big Frankenstein fan, and of course we loved Kolchak the Night Stalker, which was a great one-season show that has got quite a cult following now, which I think is amazing. I just bought the entire set on Blu-ray, where they restored it and made it look brand new. It's really awesome. Speaking of which, to our listeners, you can find that on Amazon, and it's through Kino Lorber, which is a great restoration company. They restore a lot of films, and they do a really good job. So anyway, you can find that on Amazon. You can get it on DVD or Blu-ray, but I prefer Blu-ray just because I'm that way.
So let me ask you this, because let's touch on the monsters for a minute, because they were a huge part of life back then.
Oh, yes.
Now, I discovered them living in Belleville, which would have been just before coming back to Southern Illinois in second grade. And there was a show, it was syndicated out of Los Angeles, called Seymour. He was the first horror host I ever saw.
Oh.
And he was on St. Louis's Channel 30, KDNL. And I don't know if you were able to pick that up at that point, pre-cable.
No, we didn't get the St. Louis stations till Susquehanna Cable TV came to our lovely area in 1976.
Okay.
And which I remember the day. Such a special moment in my life. I remember the month and the year, May of 76, when I got cable. I was so excited, but that opened up the world of KDNL and the St. Louis stations, and hence getting to see all those great old TV shows and monster movies and things my dad loved, and my dad gladly introduced me to them. So, and then having you as a friend enhanced the love of the films, and that's really when my love of monsters really just bloomed, because up until then we watched monster movies on on Channel 8 with Herb Kopie on Friday nights.
Now, was he already doing it by then? Because
I believe so.
Okay.
I may be wrong about that, because I don't even know where you could find out for sure, but that
I feel like he started that in 79 or 80. As early as 73, 74, like Kolchak time. That's what I was going to ask you is where did you first see the monsters? Because you didn't have the cable. I didn't think Herb was showing them yet. So would you?
I think probably Channel 3.
Okay.
They had an afternoon movie.
Yeah.
This is a really vague memory. I remember seeing The Haunting from 1962 on Channel 3.
Okay.
And I remember the staircase at the end. And, of course, the KFDS had the late night, Friday night horror film.
Oh, yes, yes.
A lot of Hammer movies were shown on that. A lot of the Dracula movies.
That's right.
Truthfully, I think the Hammer movies were really probably my first introduction to monster movies.
Okay.
because the Christopher Lee Dracula movies were shown quite regularly. And they weren't that old at that point. They were maybe
No,
10, 11, 12 years old, which
less
is
than that because they showed. Well, I would have watched in like
Dracula.
71 or 2. I watched Dracula Prince of Darkness, which was made in 66. So it was only
Yeah,
six
so that wasn't
six
that
years
old.
old, 5 or 6.
And Dracula AD 1972 was
Yeah,
obviously 1972. So
yeah.
doesn't that blow your mind that time is now? We were that age that silent films were as long a time ago as these are now.
Yeah.
It just kind of makes me feel really old.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot that makes me feel really old, including looking in a mirror. So,
I see my father in the mirror, although my father looked a lot younger than me at my age. Of course, he didn't go through what I've been going through for the last few years.
well, that
But
is true.
yeah, it's been kind of a crazy ride. But that whole concept blows my mind, like the Brady Bunch. Yeah, do kids today look at the Brady Bunch like I looked at the Charlie Chaplin films? Like silent movies and the Our Gang show and all those
Probably
things.
so, but
Isn't that crazy?
but at the same time, you probably had some affection for those old movies, the
I
silents.
did. I did.
Yeah. And
And
kids won't love the Brady Bunch because it's corny and
no,
it's this and
it's
it's that.
corny and
So, yeah,
which is really a shame because they're really a lot of fun. The corniness is part of the fun, I think, of these shows.
absolutely.
Of course, the sentimental value to us because it reminds us of our childhood. If only our childhood was as good as it was on the Brady Bunch, but it was pretty close. Those wacky clothes they wore, I know we had pretty pretty crazy looking clothes, bell bottoms and
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
oh god, corduroy and
There is a
you name it.
picture. In fact, it's at Keith's house. We did our Christmas at Keith's house. It had to be 72, 73, right in there somewhere. And he's not dressed so badly in the picture. He's wearing some kind of blue sweater. Looks, not terrible. But I'm wearing a peach shirt with ruffles down the front.
Now that I would like to see.
Oh, Lord. I'll see if I can dig it up. I'll send it to you. It's just
Kind of
god awful.
reminiscent of, and I'm jumping ahead to what I want to talk about, but reminiscent of the blue shirt you wore in Empire Records. But anyway, which we'll discuss that a little later in the podcast, but we'll work our way up to that one. Little teaser there. Um, so we had a great time, I think, growing up our Wonder Years. You were a big part of my Wonder Years, as I was yours.
Yep.
We got in a little bit of trouble here and there. I don't think we can talk about everything we did, but this is a family podcast.
Yeah, no kidding.
We'll keep some of that under covers, but anyway, we had a lot of fun. I mean, going to your house was all. My mom used to do laundry at the laundry mat across from your house, and I used to a lot of times go across the street and play with you.
Yeah.
And you had an amazing bedroom. I remember you just had all kinds of stuff. I kind of envision. I'm trying to picture your bedroom at the time, but I was kind of a poor kid, so I had my
You had
sisters
some neat
swear I was
stuff, though.
spoiled.
Yeah,
I did. I
you
was very
definitely.
spoiled. My mom and dad saw to it that I got what I wanted, but I was very well aware that they didn't have the money. So, but I never went without. I had a good childhood. I had great parents. So, but my poor sisters, they just always talk about how spoiled I was, and I guess they were right. But
I get the
I
same thing
was.
from my brothers
Well, we're babies of the family.
Yeah.
That's basically the thing.
Well, in addition to the spoiled thing, they also said that my parents were worn out and didn't, take me in hand like they got
I
taken in
got the
hand.
same thing.
Yeah.
My sister Kim always used to say, "Why don't you get in trouble sometimes?" And I'm like, I really can't do anything right now that would shock them, and quite frankly, I didn't really want to do anything because I kind of went through their craziness with my parents. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Same for
I
me.
had,
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have had to work really hard to
oh
overcome,
Lord.
to climb to the levels of craziness that my brothers got up
Oh
to.
my
So
God. The same with my sisters
yeah,
too. I believe your brother and my sister were involved in one thing together. I'm not sure if that was the
I think
story.
that
I
is
know.
true. Yeah, I believe that is
I
right.
think the we're going to spend the night at this house and we're going to spend the night at that house, and they spent the night at Isaac Walton
Yes.
all together. Not my sister and your brother, but I don't know who the other person involved with that was. But
So my
your brother
dad
and his
got wind
girlfriend.
of that. And I
Oh
don't know how, but we
my!
ended up driving out there. And of course, we didn't have a membership or anything. We didn't belong to Isaac Walton. I don't know who all did. I don't remember who, but I used to go out there a fair amount in the summer, on somebody else's dime.
Mhm.
But we went out there that night, and Dad was bound and determined to find them. Now Isaac Walton's a good sized lake.
Yes, and
To
it's
be,
out in the boondocks.
yeah,
I
to
mean,
try to
it's
find.
way out there.
So at one point we're in the depths of stuff, and all of a sudden we're like the front of the car is suddenly like a foot from the lake. Like we're headed for the lake. And Dad jammed the brakes on and got us stopped, like literally, like, almost kissing the car bumper. And at that point he calmed down and he said, we'll just go home. And yeah, he took it out on my brother when my brother finally got home. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I believe the time of realization for my parents was when, and I shall not mention her name. Your brother's girlfriend's mother called my mother and said, "Can I speak to so and so?" And my mom's like, "No, well, she's supposed to be at your house." Well, they're supposed to be at your house.
That may be how
And
my dad got wind of it, eventually working
I
around.
believe so. I
Yeah.
believe phone calls were made after that, and my dad drove us all the way out. I don't know, we were driving all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom was fuming. But my sister Kim, she told me once, those rumors you heard about me, they're all true. I'm like, Kimberly Ann, now I'm in trouble because she does listen to my podcast. So sorry, Kim, I love you. But I tell you, I think we live vicariously through our older siblings because, like I said, I was nowhere near as wild as they were. I was more of a inside person. I like to watch my movies, and was kind of antisocial. So I know you weren't. You got out there and mingled a bit.
I did, and probably the worst thing that my brother holds against me is that I used to hit on all of his girlfriends.
Yes, you were. That is you, and I tell all my friends when I speak of you that you were the most girl crazy, using a different term than I. That is absolutely true.
Yeah,
You saw
it is.
the beauty in just about every female,
That's it.
and I'm trying to use very carefully chosen words. I remember certain teachers we had that you were like, that you would think they're hot,
Absolutely. I had crushes on a lot of the teachers. Absolutely.
Well, we
yeah.
had some pretty amazing teachers, I think,
Well,
in school.
yes.
I'm very lucky to still be friends with them, and I get to talk to them all the time. And you certainly left your impression with them because everybody remembers you that went to our school.
I don't know if I told you the story, but we went on that. My brother and my wife and I went on the history tour where we went from Cesar to Christopher, basically showing off that this is the house we lived in. Here's the custard stand. Here's the high school. Here's the grade school. I mean, we were showing, my wife everything. And we stopped at the Maid-Rite because you got to get a Maid-Rite.
Right,
and
absolutely.
I'm literally sitting at the Maid-Rite, and there's one stool to the left of me on the front row, furthest from the kitchen. And who sits down but Tom Vaughn?
Oh, that's awesome, Mr. Vaughn.
And I look over at him, of course, immediately recognize him. He looks, he's a little older, but he looks the same.
Yeah, he looks the same.
And
Mr. Vaughn.
I said, Mr. Vaughn, I was in your class. I'm sure you don't remember me. And he looked over at me and said, you hung out with that Overturf boy and the Riggs boy. I said, yes, I did. And so we did leave an impression, obviously, because how many students, by the time he retired, how many students had been through his classroom?
Oh, good Lord. You know, we don't realize that when we're kids, but yeah, most certainly. They have seen thousands of children go through, thousands upon thousands.
So he and I had a great talk that afternoon, and it was one of the highest points of that history tour, as we called it.
You know, his daughter became really good friends with my niece Melissa, and yeah, I think that's awesome. Of course, Mr. Vaughn worked with my mom all those years at the grade school.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And you know, I never feel comfortable calling my teachers by their names. I see them.
No.
I can't. It's like awkward. I want to still call them Mr. Vaughn, and I think Rita Williams is actually, I knew Rita was good friends with my older sister. They went to school together.
Okay.
And Rita Williams and Sherry Saul both, if you remember Mrs. Saul, little
tiny
girl. Actually, Mrs. Saul was a student teacher when I was in kindergarten. Of course, that's back before you went to school. But they both were really good friends with my sister Loretta, so it was just kind of strange. And my cousin Brenda and her now husband David, Brenda Flowers and Mr. Flowers.
Of course.
Yeah, they we helped them when they were going to college. It was always cool to have my cousin Brenda be a school teacher. It kind of made me feel, well, hell, I had my mom working there, my cousin Brenda working there. And it was kind of like I was in like Flynn.
Right.
So I had connections. But it's always good at the store to see, and I keep you updated, and I'm glad I can do that. I see Mrs. McDonald, and for a while I saw Mrs. Spence, which she was never one of your teachers, and I pretty much ran into all my teachers. Some of them have passed away since, but one thing about working in your hometown, but it's good to see them all the time, Mr. Brzezinski and Coach and all those people.
You know, it was wild that that we had Mr. Brzezinski, and there were two, of course, in the Christopher School. And then I moved to McLeansboro, and you know who taught at McLeansboro was the other Brzezinski.
That's right, and I forgot about that.
I had all three of them at some point, and then there was another one, but I don't know. He might have been a cousin. I don't know if it was another sibling, but he lived up in northern Illinois somewhere. So there was a fourth one that I never got to go, be in his class or her class.
I believe they had, because Dell and Gell were twins.
Yeah,
and both of which are doing well still. And I just saw Mr. Coach's daughter not too long ago, Sonia, who was born our fourth grade year.
Okay.
I don't remember if you were in my class. I don't think you were in my fourth grade class.
Well, let's figure that out. So second grade was Mrs. Twitty, and we were together there, right?
Third grade, I was Mrs. Bechtel.
Yes, and I was across the hall with Mrs. Hubble. And I remember my biggest memory of that entire year was that you were G.I. Joe for Halloween.
Yes.
And I was Groucho Marx, and they kind of had me come over and play like Groucho Marx.
Yeah, I remember that really well.
Yeah.
I remember they had a Christmas play that year. And they, for some reason...
was I the woodsman chasing?
I think
was that play? Yeah.
And they were going to have me, for some reason, be the tree. The talking tree, and I was literally, no pun intended, I was petrified. I just was so shy, I didn't want to get up to school, and I think they finally realized that, and they chose someone else, and I was so relieved. But I don't know why they thought I could do that. I just don't.
There wasn't a lot to that role. They probably thought they could ease you into it, maybe. Maybe. Because I think all the tree did was, like, if I remember correctly, the tree runs away from me.
Oh, well, that would have been perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that was all it was. I come out with my axe.
Actually, I wish, now looking back in hindsight, I wished I could have enjoyed things a little more instead of being so afraid of things, because that was me when I was a kid. That shyness was just... I find it amazing that Mrs. Twitty told my mom that if I could do amazing things in life if I just break out of my shell.
Oh,
and, I don't know why those teachers saw that in me, but I don't know.
Well, moving on up the grade level. So fourth was Mrs. Hughes,
and I had Mr. Byers.
Really? Okay.
Lynn Byers. Yeah, because you were across the street then. I don't think we had classes together until Miss Williams.
Well, it'd all be for fifth.
Yeah, and I had Larry Massey.
Okay. And then sixth with Mr. Reach.
Yep. I think that's right. That's Mr. Reach for me, too.
Okay. And that was where I still tell the famous story. Do you remember the thing where Mr. Reach had to be away because he was either volunteer fireman or something? And it was when that church burned. So he was away, and they had Tom Vaughn, I think, come and sit in the class, I think. And then whoever, probably Mrs. McDonald, covered both her class and his, probably stood between them in the hallway, keeping them from, setting the building on fire. And he came to keep us from setting the building on fire. So he was sitting there, and Brian Ziblet started to very slowly insert himself into the desk one limb at a time.
Oh,
you remember this story?
He was a very skinny boy.
Well, he was. And every time Tom Vaughn would look up, there would be another part of Brian in the desk. And eventually he called him out on it. And Brian got up and ran out of the room throwing an F-bomb at him, which was maybe the first F-bomb I might have ever heard.
Yeah, because you didn't say that. That was like biblical then. Right? That was like thunder and lightning came out of the sky.
And a couple of the boys jumped up, probably, Heath or Phil. Somebody, athletic jumped up and said, "You want me to go after him?" Tom Vaughn said, "Yes, go after him." And they took off. And we're all just sitting there in the class, blinking.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay. And then they come back up and they go, "He ran down the street to the street that goes to his house. And he looked back at us and he yelled." And then they said it too, because they got to get away with saying it because they were saying it as part of reporting what had happened. And then, we all just kind of sat back down. Of course, we weren't doing anything. He only had us like reading our book, whatever, book we had for Reach's class. But that's my fondest memory of that particular grade. And then once we got to seventh, where you pretty much had everybody, I had, oh, good God.
I think Miss Williams was our homeroom teacher, seventh grade, though.
No, I had Connie, help me. Connie.
That's not ringing a bell.
Oh, seventh grade. You know her.
Connie.
That was her first name. I swear it was Connie. She had glasses.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Oh, I'm just ruining my reputation remembering things now.
So
I swear we had Miss Williams in seventh grade. She was one of our teachers, though.
Well, she was certainly English, yeah. But
let me go across my mind. Let's see. It was Carla McDonald, Tom Vaughn, Miss Williams,
Frank Sanka,
Rita
Williams, and Connie. Either starts with a W or a T.
Well, there was a Connie Malkovich.
Nope.
That wasn't her. She was special ed.
Nope.
Incidentally, she was related to John Malkovich, the actor.
Oh, of course she was.
Yeah.
She would have to be. You couldn't have that name
drop. Which, backing up, name drop to my street that I grow up on and that I live on now used to house the Miners Hospital where John Malkovich was born.
That's right.
Anyway, yeah, I digress, which is the street we met on. But I'm trying to think. Connie. Who am I forgetting? Oh, where's my old yearbooks?
So, tall, curly-headed, glasses, dark brownish hair.
Well, there was Cindy Turner too.
Turner, that's it. It wasn't
Cindy Turner.
Cindy, I said Connie. Dang it! All right, Cindy Turner. There we go.
Well, I was thinking Connie Malkovich,
but all right, Cindy Turner. Yeah. So Mrs. Turner was my homeroom, seventh grade. And eighth grade. Actually, I don't think there was a lot of shifting there between those two.
Actually, Cindy Turner was my eighth grade teacher as well.
Okay.
I had Miss Williams as my homeroom teacher. But we had classes together with Miss Williams.
Yes. In Mrs. Turner's class, though, there was one point we were all up against the wall doing something where we were moving around like flashcards or something. I was standing up.
A contest?
Yeah, something like that. And the stoner young man, I can't think of his name right now.
Well, maybe we shouldn't mention his name.
Okay, that one guy that will remain nameless. but he was sitting in the back row and he'd already been eliminated from whatever this competition play was. And I was up against the back wall awaiting my next turn at whatever this was. And he looked at me, and there was enough going on in the front that nobody saw this, but he said, take a bow, and punched me in my nether regions.
Nice?
Yes. And that was the first time I'd ever gotten racked, as they called it.
Oh, man.
So
I got racked plenty of times in PE with war ball.
Oh, yeah. That was.
Remember that?
They would always fire right for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, God. And we would always be the last ones left because we hid behind the other people. and John Coder and Phil Steinmetz could throw balls so hard they could bust against the wall.
Oh, my Lord.
And
yeah.
That one time it was just me and Coder on opposite sides. Do you remember this?
Yes.
And he's throwing and I'm dodging, and he hit me so hard between the knees that it stuck, which actually was going to make him be out and me win the game, but he gave me a look, so I just kind of let the ball fall and threw the game. But how glorious would that have been had I won that game? The nerd.
Oh, my Lord, that would have been amazing.
The science fiction geek nerd won the war ball game in PE. I probably would have got depantsed or what did we call them back then? Snuggies? Probably would have got a snuggie, which is a wedgie, I guess.
A wedgie, yeah, that's what we call them. Yeah. And if you got your target's feet off the ground, it was an atomic wedgie.
Oh my God, I still remember. And I won't mention again. I'm trying to avoid names, but we had a classmate named Jimmy, and he got a wedgie, and the PE teacher, who I shall also not mention, coming in going, now what would Jimmy's mom think when he comes home and his underwear is ripped? And I just, even then, I'm like, oh, don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh. And I have to tell this story, because Mr. Brzezinski, coach, was responsible for our sex education class. Do you recall this in the 7th grade?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember it not being very in-depth, shall we say.
No, but he does give... Do you remember the speech he gave? If you're not adult enough to sit here and listen without laughing, you need to leave the room right now. Well, I told him many, many years later, I said, I remember that. And I said, I honestly was trying not to laugh so hard that I almost said, I'll see you later. I'm going to go to the lunchroom. And he said, you know what? He said, I'll be honest with you. Me too. Isn't it weird to know funny. Your teachers and your superior, your elders as adults and as human beings, and you realize they were people too, even though you didn't.
I have to tell a Frank Sanka story. So this is one still in my repertoire because it's so good. He had that model of the Empire State Building. I think it had been built out of like a magazine centerfold or something, and you pulled it out and you glued it all together into this, giant Empire State Building. Well, he had a little toy ape he put on it, of course. And at one point, one of the ne'er-do-wells grabbed it and took off with the ape. And Frank, never getting up or anything, just looks up and goes, "Hey, what are you doing, King Kong?" And the kid turns around and he goes, "Put him back where you found him." And he walked over and sat it beside the building. And Frank said, "Is that where you found him?" And he picked it back up and he put it back on top. And he went, "Okay," and let the kid walk away. But with that Chicago accent of his, "Hey, what are you doing, King Kong?"
I loved him so much. And he wasn't that old when I think he told us one time he was 28.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, he was just maybe 15 years older than us.
Oh my God, he seemed like he was in his 50s.
Didn't it seem like that though? But he passed away a few years ago, which is
I'm sorry to hear that.
I remember that really well. But he was a very devout Catholic guy and a super nice guy. He really liked my mom. My mom really liked him because he would, when he first got started, he would fill in as a lunchroom supervisor. That's when my mom got to know him.
Oh, okay.
I thought a lot of him. It's funny that kids today, or not when I say kids today, people maybe my nephew's age, 14 years younger than me, when they realized who my mom was, the lunch lady, I kind of get a little bit of what's the word? Claim to fame. Oh, your mom was my lunch lady.
Yeah, it's true. Your mom was the only one that I knew. Like I
Yeah.
could always pick your mom out of the crowd back there working, but I didn't know any of those other ladies by name or, they just didn't. Your mom was the only one that stood out.
Just
I could
there.
always pick her out. Yeah, absolutely.
My mom.
But that's, coming over to your house, of course, I knew your
What's
mom.
weird
So.
thinking about I was just saying, thinking about your elders as human beings, when you realize your parents were human beings. My mom actually was talking about some guys whistling at her one time. And I was like, ugh, that's my mom. But then I look at pictures of my mom when she was younger, and she was really pretty. I was like, I never thought of my mom like that. But,
no, you don't. But there's a picture of my grandma, my dad's mom,
mm-hmm.
and she was in full flapper gear.
And I bet she looked really good.
She was, yeah, beautiful young woman. But, when I met her, she's grandma,
My mom and dad were really good looking people. I've got a picture of when they were younger, and my mom was built like Marilyn Monroe, and my dad looked like a movie star. Matter of fact, I'm trying to think of who everybody said he looked like. It's left my mind, but he was quite proud of It'll Come to Me in a Little Bit. Don't you hate when that happens?
Oh, yeah, and it happens.
It happens quite often to me. I feel that I've got so much stuff going on in my head that it's like a snow globe. If I move my head, it just all jingles around in my head, and then I have to let it settle before I'll remember. So if I pop up with the name, in a later part of this podcast,
we'll call that aging Tourette's. Yes, exactly.
I'll scream it out.
And if not during the podcast, later in the night,
you'll just wake up in the night. Greg,
yeah.
Greg, I remember one time that brings back a funny memory, and we're going all over the place here. But I remember one time I had this little, I don't know what it was. It showed films. I can't remember the name of it, but it was battery operated.
The little hand crank thing, or
the hand crank. That's it. It was a hand crank, and it showed a Star Trek episode. And I had never.
Yes.
I was still new to Star Trek, and the episode, I was like, I haven't seen this one before.
It's the one where they turn into crystals.
Yes.
Wink of an eye, I think.
Channel 30, and that episode came on, and I hurriedly called you, Greg, it's on. It was By Any Other Name is the
By
episode.
Any Other Name. Okay.
Yeah, and that features, I think, the first time a female crew member got killed, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And it was the actress she played in Charles in Charge later. And she was on Salem's Lot. I'm trying to think of her name. She was the secretary on Salem's Lot.
Dang, I'm not going to think of it right now either.
Damn it. There'll be two names I'll yell at later.
So I had the same toy, but mine was the $6 Million Man one.
I had that as well.
And all these years later, I have the DVD box set, and I'm watching the first season, and the scene where he pulls the iron pole with the cement chunk at the base out of the ground and flings it so it busts something up in the far distance came on the episode, and I didn't have anybody to call, but I was like jumping up and going, that's the thing from that toy. That's the clip from that toy.
So, I have those memories as well. It's like, dang it. Because how many times did you look at that little crank up toy,
Hundreds. And you could run it backwards and forwards. And it was the first kind of control you had over the media you were taking in,
Surprisingly, I got that viewer, the $6 Million Man viewer, I got that on my Star Trek Christmas of 1976. My parents bought me all Star Trek, but that one toy that was $6 Million Man. But I never got the $6 Million Man toys, which I love $6 Million Man. I would have loved to have had the doll and the Bigfoot doll, and those were just so cool. Where you look through Steve Austin's eye, he had the eye.
Yeah, and I did. That was my Christmas that year. I did get those. I had the rocket ship that turned into the Bionic Support Center, and I had him. I had Steve and Oscar and Bigfoot and Mastodon.
I didn't get that, but I did get the entire Star Trek everything that year, which is my favorite Christmas ever. So I'm not complaining.
No, yeah, you lucked out, and that was one of the things that when I would come over, that was one of the things that I envied
Oh
with your
gosh,
Star Trek collection.
I
So
wished I would have took
absolutely,
better care of those. I actually have been. They've re-released a lot of the figures
yeah,
lately, and I've been buying them.
Migo's
And I was
back.
like, "Oh, leave them in the packages. Don't open them." But then I'm like, "No, I want to look at them." So I had to open them, and they're sitting by my bed right now. I was
So
just like, "This is
so
awesome that I can get these again."
I remember having a Superman Migo, and if you took his if you took the outfit off, they molded blue shorts onto him. And so he
Really,
became, instead of Superman, I turned him into the man from Atlantis. I took the outfit off and just kept him, in his
that was a great show
swimsuit.
too.
And
Patrick Duffy.
and just to tell you how rough I was on my toys. So when the dolls started to get like, all right, I've played all, because I ended up later with some of the Star Trek Mego, but this is like 8th grade high school, like several
Yes.
years after you had gotten yours. But I played, okay, I've played Uhura. I've sat her at her, because I also got the Enterprise at one point. My parents found it on clearance at a Kmart, like post
Yes, they were
Christmas, and I got it for like super
$5.
cheap. And they
Yeah,
bought it, or I bought it out of my own allowance because it was only like $1.50 or something stupid. So
yeah, it
anyway,
was really
so
low.
I had her sitting there with her, legs crossed, all hailing frequencies open, about all you could do with her. And finally, I'm like, I've had enough of that. So I took her out and took a Bic lighter and burned
I
the side of her
remember this.
face. Yes.
I
And turned her
remember
into a
this.
villain. Yes. Turned her into a burnt faced villain that then could fight my superheroes in the Man from Atlantis or
Oh my
whatever.
God.
Yeah.
I
So,
remember that so well.
yep.
And of course, those figures in their original form are worth a lot of money now, especially that Enterprise play set.
Well,
I think,
our friend Terry had an older sister that was, much, all three of us,
yeah, we
youngest
all
in the
had older
family, and all
siblings.
had the siblings who were fairly, a fair amount older in some
Yeah,
cases.
we were all
And
babies in the family.
she had original Barbies in the box, still in mint condition. He showed
Isn't
me
that
a couple
crazy?
times after, and she'd left them. She'd left them there in like their attic or garage or something.
I
And
would hope they did
oh,
something
I hope he
with
did. I
those.
hope he took them with him. I hope he still got them. Or
His sister would be up there in the years now.
yeah, because she was. I mean, she had a family when we
She
were
was at
still
least
in
my
grade
older
school.
sister. My
Yeah.
sister, actually, she passed away 10 years ago, but she would have been 75
Golly.
this year. She was Olivia Newton-John's age.
Wow.
Enough, yeah.
So
Very strange. Didn't mean to bring the room down just then.
no, just wondering
That's
where we
me.
should go next.
You know
In
where
this.
they are now? They're dead. That's where they
Well,
are.
that's true.
The show Freaks and Geeks. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah, I
Was
I
that not a
watched a
page out
little
of
of
our
it.
childhood?
Well, yes, it was absolutely those
I was
three. The
looking
three
for Lemon
mains were.
Tree, and I was
Yeah,
like, there was the tall guy with the glasses, and yeah, talking
yeah,
about comedy movies, and there was a episode where they found some movies
yes.
they watched secretly, and I really laughed because anyway, we're not going to get into that memory on the
Okay.
podcast. I think it would be a funny story, but yeah, let's not. We'll chuck that under some of this
That
stuff
story we
got
didn't
into.
tell was on beta. There.
Yeah.
There you go. That's enough.
And our friend Terry could pick any lock that there was, and thank God for that, because that's one of the experiences I had, that being totally vague here, that I still laugh about and kind of cherish, actually.
Oh
All
yeah,
I can
that was.
say is I never saw peaches used in the way they were used in one of those movies we saw.
Do you know that this thing we're not talking about? Do you know that
Yes.
what the one that we watched was probably the
most famous?
well, beyond that, yeah, the most notorious, because it had sequences in it that should not have been our first experience in this realm.
What a warped view of what that was all about. I was thinking that myself, but
because when I tell people that was my first experience in that realm,
what?
they go, what? That one?
Oh man, when Marilyn Chambers died, and I'm totally giving away what I'm talking about. I was like, I remember talking to my district manager, and the news had just come through and it popped up on my phone. And I said, "Oh, Marilyn Chambers died." He said, "Really?" And we were about the same age. And my boss is like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "You don't know who Marilyn Chambers is?"
Dang.
Well, we knew immediately. Like I said, we were about the same age. But yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well,
Such
all I
good
can tell you
memories.
is that, as much as I liked underwater adventures, Jacques was not my favorite Cousteau. So, and I'll let you guys all figure out
Use
where
your
that goes.
imaginations, and
Yes.
if you don't know what we're talking about, well, I don't even know what to tell you.
There you go.
I'm kind of at a loss for that. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. So anyway, we go from our childhood, and then we both, oddly enough, had the same interests all through our life, because you started getting into making animated 8mm movies at SIU, and
Yep.
my dad was showing me how to do that at home, and I didn't tell you because I thought mine sucked and you were much better. And I kept it quiet, but I was doing that too. And I made a few epic films on my own, and I think my parents bought me a Super 8 camera and a projector, remember? And we got together and made an epic film in my backyard with
The Incredible Superhero. I remember that one
with
very
my
well.
Electroman
Yes.
doll. He was like this 14-inch doll that had, I think that was the last toy I got for Christmas.
That was one of those weird ones. He was
had
weird.
A light on top.
Yeah, and that's about all he did. He barely moved.
But it was cool though. It was like, but it was one of those you probably played with for maybe 10 minutes and it got put on the shelf. But
yeah,
he was still cool looking.
The design was great, but it was like there was also a Spider-Man, and he was molded with one arm up in the air, like over his head, and one down, and he rode a web or a string. He climbed it mechanically, like you put him on the string and he went up it. But that doll bugged the crap out of me because you couldn't move the arms. It wasn't fully
you
posable.
couldn't do anything else with it.
Exactly.
So he just sat on my shelf looking cool most of the time. And God knows where he is now. I think he's in the attic up here.
Well, his movie debut was some fine motion picture stuff.
Fine. And that's actually the day you took the picture of me that showed that I was Napoleon Dynamite before Napoleon Dynamite.
That's absolutely true. That's right. I must have brought every camera I owned over there for that.
I think you did. We had a blast, though. That was so much fun.
It really was.
Here we are all these years later, and we're podcasting together. It's pretty amazing.
That had to be 81. So that's 40 plus for the movie filming.
81, 82.
Yeah.
I think it was 81.
Okay.
Because I think I was 14, 15. And that incredible hair that was just out of control. My hair was, so you should have title card. Leonard, and there's Leonard's hair.
As much fun as The Incredible Superhero was, I actually think I have to give the prize to the best thing we ever did, to Super Guy, the low budget movie.
That was so much fun.
Because casting you as Rex Ruther, the villain of the piece,
we had Lori Batson and
as
Walker.
Well, she was Lois Lane, but I don't remember the silly name we gave her.
Either.
Rick Walker was the robber.
Yeah.
And I only had him in there to do a terrible pun where he jumps up in front of Fred Puzzo, I guess, the Clark Kent guy, and he says, "Hey, what do you got there? It's a bat, man." And he goes, "What are you doing with it?" "Robbing you, Batman, Robin." Oh, so funny.
And of course, Lisa Monteggia, I don't remember what she played.
She was Rex Ruther's henchman. And I think she was a robot that he was sending to blow something up, like she was a bomb robot or something. Your master plan, do you remember the lengthy monologue I made you go through that?
Yes.
It was like an entire reel of the film, and you're standing in it's Tom Vaughn's class, I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
Yeah. We shot it in there, and we moved some of the desks out of the way, and you're in front of the chalkboard, and you're rubbing your hands with evil glee for the entirety of the speech.
And my hair just flowering. Yeah. I don't know what you'd call it in the air.
Do you remember,
Yes.
though, we showed it, and do you remember that when he runs into the room and we did that super simple effect where we had you step up on a bunch of the encyclopedias,
Yes.
but it looked like he was picking you up, and it actually really paid off. It really worked. And
Yeah,
the
that was
kids were
excellent.
like really flabbergasted that we pulled that effect off. They were, how'd you do that? I don't see any wires. And they were all, freaking out.
That was ingenious on your part. You thought
It
that up.
it worked so well. It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
I
But
think you
that
showed that
film,
to your.
if I could have any of my old films in their entirety, like on a disc, that's the
That
one I
would be
wish I
fun.
had.
I would
Yeah.
love to see that again. It would be
Yep.
hilarious. I think you showed that at McLeansboro too when you went to
I did.
McLeansboro.
Yeah, I did.
Oh God, I remember. And there's that. When you moved, that was like the most awful thing in my life, and I don't think you knew that. I was so upset, but
Well, we didn't
it is
talk
what
for
it
a long
is.
time because I
We did.
distinctly remember we had talked about Star Trek 2, but we didn't talk about Star Trek 3 for a long time after its release.
I think you came to my house our senior year.
That sounds right.
Well, that was a couple of years later, yeah. But McLeansboro might as well have been Australia back then because we
That's true.
Media, and that was long distance, and we didn't grow apart. We're always friends, but we kind of did our own thing for a long time, and
our worlds weren't overlapping.
Yeah, especially after high school. And
Yeah.
I don't think we connected again until MySpace.
That's right.
Whatever that was, which thank God for social media.
2008-09, so it was that.
Yeah, and you had gone on to being in the movie industry and all these really cool things, and I had no idea you were even doing that stuff. So, but you went to McLeansboro, then SIU.
Yeah, did all of that. Took a year off. Went to Florida.
Scholastic. What was the show?
Scholastic IQ.
Yes, that was so cool.
Yeah.
There's my friend Craig. I'm like telling everybody, hey, that was my best friend a long time ago.
Marvin,
so cool.
Marvin something or other hosted it. I still got that on VHS somewhere.
That one
that survives.
We're quite good at it too, if I'm not mistaken.
We did well the first round. We beat that other team, which was I think Centralia, and then they brought us back, and I wore a black tuxedo shirt with a red bow tie, trying to look really cool. And I was captain that time because I think the captain from the previous episode wasn't available. So I got moved up to captain. So I was doing most of the talking, but we bombed so badly on the second one. It was like just sitting around going, duh, for the entirety of the episode. So
that's always awkward when it's,
yeah.
Yeah. But I think did Tony Waite just take that over from CIL?
I only remember this Marvin guy, and he was Marvin was not a great host. He would say he would think, he knew all the answers. They're on the cards in front of him, but he would kind of snark at you if you got it wrong. Like in our winning episode, he says stuff like, well, we'll go on to one of the toss-up questions. Well, we'll all be able to answer it or something.
Oh, geez. Really
jerk, come on.
What a jerk.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the end of part 1 of my interview with Craig. We talked a long time, and next week will be part 2, and Craig will talk about working in the TV and movie industry. He's got some great stories. He worked on the show Dawson's Creek and appeared or was an extra in A League of Their Own with Tom Hanks and Gina Davis. And he's got some great stories, and I had a great time recording with him this week. I've never done this with another person, and I couldn't have picked a better person to do a podcast with. Thank you for listening, as always. I love that you listen to my podcasts, and I enjoy doing them. And I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast From My Head to Your Ears, and we'll continue this next week. I promise. Thank you. Merry Christmas.